Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're really excited to have Westtown Bank here with us today, and I'm going to go through some really exciting information with everybody. But I'm going to give everybody a couple more minutes to straggle in here, and we will get rocking and rolling here just shortly. All right. Well, I vote that we get rocking and rolling here to be respectful of everyone's time. We've got a lot of good content here to talk with everyone today. Just a little housekeeping to begin with. We are recording this for anybody that is attending or maybe not attending and would like a copy. So we'll send that out a few days after this is over. And if you have any questions or anything that you would like to ask during the presentation, we ask that you, just jot them down and type them in. We have the ability for you guys to ask questions, and we will save the Q&A for the end of this. So I've got Courtney here with us, who's our super valuable team member here at RiskScout, and she's going to be one that is coming in and asking those questions for us. So if you hear another stranger's voice, that's Courtney. And then with us today is Cole of RiskScout. He's our senior sales executive and a former CEO of a couple financial institutions. And we've got Melissa Marcel here, who is of Westtown Bank, and she's the COO there. So usually you guys have to suffer through me doing the whole presentation, but we got a lot of help from Cole this time and Melissa. So they're going to walk us through majority of this. And again, feel free to save up those questions and we'll get to them at the end. If for some reason we run out of time at the end, you're welcome to reach out to us and ask additional questions at that time. All right, guys. So with all that said, I'm going to get us started here. Again, we have Melissa and Cole would really like to be the driver here, so I'm going to let him in and take us over these next couple of slides we've got here. So we're going to go through some slides to begin with and then some Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. Again, my name is Coleman Clarity. I am the Senior Sales Executive here at RiskScout, but I spent about 25 years on the side of the desk of most bankers in a couple different C-level positions. So I get what this is all about, and it's a pleasure to be with you here today. So obviously today we're going to talk specifically about hemp, but there are a number of underbanked and very profitable businesses in this market. We're going to talk today about hemp and CBD, which is obviously federally legal in all 50 states. The industrial part of hemp is a very, very booming industry, and I'm sure Melissa will talk about that a little bit later. And quite honestly, these are existing businesses that are in your community. In the press, you see a lot of press about cannabis, marijuana / THC. That is also an extremely growing industry. There are not a number of financial institutions in that space. On the bank side, there's only a couple, about 100 or so, and on the credit union side, a little bit more. But it is definitely a growing trend as more and more states adopt both medical and recreational. And obviously, you'll find in all of these high-risk businesses, there's actually about 40 categories of them. They generally have the same characteristics in that they bring very, very high core deposits. They can do substantially other business with your financial institution and can be very valuable as customers for your financial institution. So you see there's also listed money service businesses, private ATMs. Over 60% of the ATMs in this country are owned privately. Cryptocurrency is something that is becoming much more popular and in the mainstream media. I did a session yesterday for the last week for the Ohio Bankers League, and there was a survey taken, and about 41% of the institutions know that their customers are involved in cryptocurrency. So I'm going to go on and move on here a little bit to talk about the next slide. Anytime you're going to be in the high-risk space, there's a number of things that are going to be taken into consideration by both your financial institution as well as your primary examiners there. Your CAMELS rating is, of course, one of the primary drivers of everything that you do at the financial institution. The various ratios associated with your profitability and your capital. Obviously, if you're going to get into high risk space, your board has to have an appetite for that risk. And your compliance plan and corresponding other plans, for instance, your loan policy, have to all address these issues there. The one thing the policies don't address is your staffing, and you have to make sure that your staff is certainly understanding. The EDD requirements, we'll touch on those a little bit here, but you have to have those covered, and obviously the BSA software to be able to track the transactions, report SARs, etc. We at RiskScout are a group of professionals who are helping institutions to build that compliance program, like in here we're going to talk about today in hemp and CBD. Excuse me. We're going to talk to Westtown Bank and Trust, and I'm going to give you an overview about that, about what they've been able to do there. In about a year of running this program, their core deposits, their demand deposits have now exceeded about 34% of the bank's total demand deposit accounts, and that is in excess of 15% of the bank's total core deposits as measured in their Uniform Bank Performance Report. Obviously, these are no interest or low interest bearing accounts and are very accretive to the bank's margin and other areas of profitability, as well as the liquidity position of the bank relative to that. Obviously, as I mentioned, that is contributing to the bank's net interest margin being in the 61st percentile of its group. The fee income from these core deposits are about 10 times greater than other commercial accounts. And we're going to talk really about the cross-sell ratio. Their cross-sell ratio exceeds 66%. And obviously that is contributing also to the bank's return on investment, as well as ultimately their return on average assets. Lending at Westtown Bank and Trust is very concentrated in the SBA and USDA loans. And hemp is a huge source of funding for them and contributing to that ROA of over 2.0. There are also other great lending opportunities in this space. Obviously, commercial and real estate loans are solid options, as are the government guaranteed programs there. So this is just, our little commercial. I'm not going to read it to you. You'll get it in your deck, but we have a number of success stories out there. We're going to share Westtown Bank and Trust. We're going to talk to them about their success, where they've now been able to grow from opening only about 5 accounts pre-pandemic per month. Now they're taking in applications in excess of 100 accounts and for various demand deposit accounts, merchants, and insurance, as well as loans, all in the RiskScout portfolio. There are a number of other banks that we're doing great things for, but I really want to focus on Westtown Bank and Trust. So if I can, I'm going to bring in Melissa here. And Melissa, appreciate you joining us today. Most certainly we do. I want to thank you and ask you to give us a little history of you and how long you've been at Westtown, and a little bit of history on Westtown Bank and Trust, if you mind, please.
For sure. Hey, everybody. It's nice to be on the call and a part of the RiskScout opportunity that we have in front of us. So I asked Cole to not make me talk about myself because I hate that. So I'm not going to do that. But I do serve as the bank's EVP and COO. Been with the bank for almost 15 years. We were part of the group that recapped Westtown Savings Bank back around 2007, 2008. So been through some rough times in banking. I know the bankers on this call cringed in those dates, but we survived, and we entered into the hemp market about 1.5 years ago, and we went into it with eyes wide open, did a lot of due diligence, and got where we are today. And again, you know, we are predominantly guaranteed government lending shop for our loan portfolio, and then on the other side, our funding strategies are part of niche markets, one of the largest being hemp and CBD, and that's where we sit today. We are not branch driven. We have a branch in Illinois where we're chartered. However, our largest presence is really online and serving, you know, multiple states in the hemp and CBD industry. And our headquarters for our holding company is here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
That's great. That's great. I apologize for asking you to talk about yourself, but you've done some great things at Westtown Bank and Trust. If you don't mind, you know, take us through the sort of strategic planning process, and, you know, how did the bank wake up one day and say, you know what, we need to explore the hemp market, if you don't mind? Sure.
We were keeping our close eye on the passage of the Farm Bill, but in the interim, our president and CEO, who lives in and still does in Edenton, North Carolina, had a actual hemp seed company come to him looking for not just a bank relation, or not really a bank relationship, but somewhere to store his seeds and his money, quite frankly. It was just the beginning of things. And so hemp CBD was very much on the down low. So we understood that market and started to see the opportunities there just in that one due diligence period. So Eric called, I got, you know, in my car and headed to Edenton, and we flew a couple people in from our Chicago, our legal counsel, and we started talking to them. We went on site, we looked at their farm production, we looked at their greenhouse production, we looked at the way that they harvested, we looked at the way in which they did their COAs, and just really saw a solid foundation for a business opportunity here. And that's really what got us looking into this market. And we did this with other businesses. So before we ever banked it, we called on, you know, businesses everywhere and said, hey, can we just come knock on your door and see what you're doing so we can understand it? So that's what we did, got educated in it, took a good 6 months, got staff really entrenched in it, wrote a program for it, engaged with RiskScout to help us make sure we had our policies, procedures, you know, all our checkpoints, EDD in place, and help build financial models. And with that, we opened for business in August of last year.
Wow. Wow. Most certainly, hemp is obviously classified as a high-risk business. So I have really 3 questions for you there. The first one, if you don't mind, if you could explain to our audience your process of reviewing those compliance requirements, discussion with regulators you may have had, drafting of policies, procedures. Seems like a huge task, but could you take us through that?
Sure, and it's something you don't go into lightly. And again, we do have the partnership, so that's no secret. That's why on this call, the partnership with RiskScout that has really helped us leverage this and do a lot better than we could have done with the staffing that we had. But you need to understand the industry. That's first and foremost. And I always tell everybody this because I don't ever want to embarrass myself that I think I know genetics and feminized seeds and cannabinoids and everything, but you do need to know enough about it to bank it. So I don't consider any of us subject matter experts in hemp, but I do do especially say that we're subject matter experts in banking hemp. So, you know, you need to understand it. You need to know what the risks are involved in it. And then you need to write a program around that, which would include a risk assessment, understanding what needs to get revamped in your overall BSA and AML program. And then you got to get very specific on what you're looking for in these customers as part of the onboarding and the due diligence. And again, because of our partnership with RiskScout, we were able to get assistance in that because they know the industry and then apply what we needed to. And with that, we've got a whole system built out that's online. So when someone comes to us and say they need a hemp and CBD account, the first thing that Ross or any of our team members do is get them into RiskScout, either via link our website or sending to them, and they start doing the onboarding there, which is answering questions about their business, getting copies of their license, copies of COAs, and all the things that we need to have on that. And with that, we can again onboard that and continually monitor it utilizing this one system. And, you know, a couple of things that, you know, on the front end, I always tell everybody that may call and ask this, engage with your regulators. They want to know what you're doing. And we tell everybody today, and I believe this wholeheartedly, you might think you're not banking a hemp, CBD, or even cannabis customer, but you might want to ask because you probably are. So go ahead and embrace it and get your programs in place to handle it, because that's what your regulators want you to do. They want to make sure you have staff engaged. They want to see you have some sort of systems of automation, such as RiskScout. And then lastly, you know, you want to make sure your board of directors is all in. When you go to them and present your policies, procedures, your workflows, your financial models, you need to make sure they understand what you're entering into and you get their buy-in as well, because it needs to stop from the top and go back down. So you make sure no one ever has a question of why you're banking the hemp CBD industry.
Great, great. My gosh, I think you have almost 200 or maybe a little over 200 accounts now. Can you talk about your staffing levels and the burdens of the day-to-day operations, EDD requirements, and maybe most importantly, you know, now that you're getting almost 100 applications a month, that onboarding process, is that, how's that going?
It's going well. And again, you know, when you start trying to build metrics around this, it's a little bit of a different ball game, because on one side you need additional staff because you want people really traversing this industry and knowing what they're doing. But on the other hand, you want to utilize the automation tools as much as you can. So your metrics become a little bit different because, again, a lot of things that we've been able to build out with RiskScout are some questions that frankly either, you know, make it where folks are saying, okay, well, that's not a good fit for me, or whatever the case may be. And so when they come on, some of those things already eliminate some of the lifting that we even have to engage internal staff with doing. But once it gets onboarded, we've got just a couple of people that are dedicated to jumping in RiskScout and working through. Once we get the first pass from RiskScout, we really don't touch it until then. And once that first pass is done, it moves along to our compliance team that, again, we didn't hire anyone specific to do this. We were able to take our existing team, and they were so excited about this industry. They've learned it, they know it, and they're embedded in it. So when we start talking about, you know, what has happened and how this has changed and what buildup we've seen for applications, we again take the metrics of what we can do within RiskScout versus what do we need to hire another FTE, and bar none, we certainly doing what we're doing today, I can guarantee would require a team lift of 10 to 12 people at least. And we do not for sure have that many people dedicated, although we want to make sure the customer looks and feels like we do, because we take pride in being able to offer that white glove service and experience. But again, it's leveraging systems like RiskScout to be able to get that done.
Sure. Wow. And certainly without disclosing any confidential information, can you share with everybody who's in the audience today your experience when it comes to internal and external audits and exams? How's that gone at Westtown Bank and Trust?
Well, as you know, we got bankers on this call, so our favorite things to do are audits and exams. So tongue in cheek. That they went really well, honestly. And again, I think part of it was letting them know up front what we were doing, having them engaged early on so that they can be a part of knowing what we're building out, because it's still an infant industry for a lot of people, including auditors and regulators. But for us, it was very well received, and they came in and asked the right questions. We were able to get them access to RiskScout and what we were doing. And I feel like I was very proud of what we were able to deliver both to our auditors and our examiners. And I can safely say that we have certainly not lost any good ratings that we have, and no findings or things that would cause us any sort of anxiety whatsoever in banking this industry.
That's great. That's great. I want to turn a little bit to the bank's financial performance. I sort of began my career in public accounting, and then I was a chief financial officer, but I wasn't really good at that, so got promoted to a chief executive officer. But honestly, your financial performance is one that is stellar in terms of that, and the envy of a lot of us in the banking space. An ROA north of 2, a net interest margin in the 67th percentile, non-interest income in the 98th percentile. Well, first I'd like to buy your stock because it's a hell of a return, but most importantly, share with the audience some of your secret sauce and how does hemp have to do with that overall strategy?
For sure. The link is on the way for you to buy some stock, Cole, so that's not a problem. We've got, I think, a relatively strong strategy again in the guaranteed government space, and part of the balance of that is we both garner deposits in that world as well as coupling it with things like hemp and CBD. So I think the way we do it again is allowing our white glove experience, so that we're for every loan we gather to the deposits and just have the perfect relationship in Storm. But everything today, and I think a lot of folks, we're a little bit not unique in that a lot of folks are sitting on cash as we are today, but the one unique thing, we're not out there fighting for all the same business that others. We pick these niche markets and really go after them and get that full approach. But because hemp and CBD allows us to get these non-interest bearing deposits that fund these great guaranteed government loans, our NIM is obviously lower than what it would because of our cost of funds. So that's a great story to tell. And then our returns come along with, again, trying to be as efficient as we can by leveraging systems and technology and automation to make sure we're, again, delivering a good service experience, but at the same time, not having a head count of 20 FTEs for 20 accounts. So it's the balancing act. And again, going after those good, solid businesses, and we've talked a lot here about deposits, which is really our big play here, but we try to provide full service for hemp and CBD, which is inclusive of loans. We have been able to do about 22 million in guaranteed government lending, both for SBA and USDA, that we're very proud of. We had a big lift for PPP for the hemp and CBD industry that we're very proud of. And then, one of the things that we found the gaping hole a few months ago when we were trying to make sure we were banking this community, it was nobody was providing merchant processing service in a way that seemed fair and reasonable, I would say. So after that, we kicked off Westtown Payments, of which we have a strategic partnership and offer that service up under our umbrella of cash management and overall experience for the customer.
Yikes. Well, when I was working at a financial institution, one of my big things was it's much easier to market your products and services to people who are inside your four walls versus those that are outside the four walls or just driving by. You've done a phenomenal job in that cross-sell ratio there in the hemp space of over 66%. And what do you attribute that to? Do you have a special program, or is it? Talk to us about how you really have, because that has also contributed to your ROI. Obviously, the non-interest bearing deposits are accretive to your net interest margin, but obviously payments and loans are really a driving force of lots of other income. Could you talk about that, please?
For sure, and this is where I can take zero credit. I have an incredible team that takes care of cross-selling to our customers. Ross Sloan, that many of you probably know, Mary Merritt and her team that's on our commercial account services. But it's again trying to make sure everybody knows this is a great place to bank, and we'll give you that entire banking relationship. And so we do have some programs. For example, if you come in and you keep a certain balance on hand with us for DDA, we're going to make sure for merchant processing, we give you leverage pricing there. So again, we recognize that full banking relationship, and we try to say, because you are giving us that entire relationship, we want to give you the value add that you give us. And that's part of some of the things we do. But, you know, again, we're an institution where we try to look at businesses from a holistic approach, and what can we do to help your business grow on the financial side. And by giving that service that's all inclusive, we're able to leverage and do that.
Great, that's interesting for sure. I think at one point, Melissa, I shared with you that I was on the board of a bank in Charlotte, and I wanted to share with the group an experience at the bank in Charlotte. We had a customer, actually probably one of our top 5 customers, who had a series of warehouses. And it turned out a good percentage of the space that was leased out was actually to the hemp industry, primarily for storage as well as related products associated with it. The bank contacted its regulator, and the folks at the bank got absolutely scared and essentially threw the customer out. And I think that's what's happening, and you're seeing that because banks are throwing out their customers and they're coming to Westtown Bank. Tell me how you know, people should address those issues, because I think what you're also finding is the people that are involved in these industries are potentially in your top 25 customer list or 50, depending upon the size of your institution. What would you say to a bank that has that situation, and how would you direct them?
Well, I would say to embrace this industry. It's coming, and it's coming full force. And so to ask somebody to leave when you're already banking them, I think is the worst thing you can do. You've really not got to know your customers. So unless, again, somebody's been asked a question and not fairly answered it, and that's another, you know, thing you have to be cognitive of. But I would say you need to build this program, be ready for it. Again, there's some things that have already been done. You're not going to be first to market like some of us were. So go ahead and leverage some of that, leverage things like RiskScout, but don't miss this opportunity. I mean, there's, again, probably the second largest depositor of our institution is a hemp related business. And had we passed on that, shame on us. And we have that full banking relationship that, again, we wouldn't have otherwise gotten if we'd have said, no, we just don't want to bank this industry. And I think, you know, you got to get to know the industry. Join some associations. Southeast Hemp Association is a great one that we're very active in. Global Hemp Association, some other ones. Join these associations, because what you're going to find, these are great business owners. They have business acumen. They're probably previous CEOs from large companies. We have the honor of banking a great customer that was in the banking world. So, you know, they're out there and they're educated, and they're something you're going to miss out on if you just don't go ahead and build the program and look at what the opportunities are, mitigate the risk, because unfortunately it's still considered a high risk business in our world, but it's easy to mitigate it, but the reward is so there. And, you know, you're going to have some limitations. You know, one of the things, Cole, you just said, that wouldn't be an organization we'd be, unfortunately, be able to give an SBA loan to, for example, because there's some rules governing leasing space and some other nuances. USDA, as we sit today, will only do a loan if you're under the USDA 2018 Farm Bill approved plan. So if you're in a state that's what you're under, we today, if you're eligible otherwise, USDA, we can do a loan there. If you're not, we can't. Now, great news is a lot of states seem to be rolling toward that, including North Carolina. So I think this is going to open up a lot more opportunity for a lot more banks to do this. And again, encouraged to do, you know, whatever. And there's a lot of banks that I think do a lot more portfolio lending than we do. So if there's an opportunity to do that, again, look at these businesses the same. We always tell everybody, we'll take care of the front end and doing that via RiskScout in our application. Once we say, okay, good to go, that this hemp and CBD customer is good, then we start saying, okay, merchant processing, see what you can do here. Hey, customer service, DDA, see what you can do. Hey, lender, see what you can do. Now treat them like you would any other business, because we've overcame the front end, which is getting to know this customer from the hemp and CBD aspect.
Great. That's great. Hey, I recently had the opportunity to speak with Earl, your chief lending officer. He was very helpful to me as I prepared for the ag lending conference that I just spoke at last week in Ohio. Because the last thing I ever was a lender, so he really helped me out. But you specifically talked about the dollar value of the loans you've done in the hemp space. He also pointed out that in other particular areas, even like commercial real estate, that you just have to make sure your policy addresses that. So, for instance, if you have a strip center and there are 10 different tenants, and one of them happens to be CBD, or even in many states it could be a dispensary for marijuana, how you have to cover that in your policies and how you need to make sure that even you speak specifically to the cash flows around that. So from that standpoint, you have had some great lending opportunities in this space. And if I could just ask you to talk a little bit about, you've obviously mastered this in the hemp and CBD space. As you look at some of the other high risk businesses that are potentially out there, particularly marijuana or THC, and that starts to, a number of states are starting to move towards that. Virginia is one of the next ones to go that way, as well as others. Can you talk how you would, for instance, if you wanted to pivot to that, what about this work you've done? How would that be helpful?
Well, for sure. And, I think one clarifying thing that we're trying to be very cognitive of, and we actually reached out to many of our customers because, again, I don't want to pretend like we know this industry like they do. But, there's a big distinction in the CBD market and what we're seeing a lot of pivot to, which is, industrial hemp with textiles and all the things we're seeing, exciting fiber and all that. And they're two separate worlds. They do collide, and one's not better or worse than the other one, but you do see the CBD side more, if you want to say like the other THC and cannabis space, they're probably more so alike. So we are embracing the future of what that looks like for the states that we're in and for the customers that might be, sort of in both. And we're looking at our true cannabis program to get going here and doing a launch of that really soon. Not open it up yet, and we'll make sure everybody knows when we do. But what we've built already, we are going to capitalize on for sure and leverage. We brought in Miss Mel Barnes from Oklahoma State Bank that ran a successful THC program there, and she's going to head this up. And she's worked with RiskScout previously, and utilizing her and her knowledge and skill set along with what we're already built. The regulators are happy with us moving into this space, and us again trying to figure it out and making sure we know and we keep our tracks separately, Cole. So if we pivot to it, we're not going away from one and focusing one on not the other. We're going to run these in two separate tracks. Ross Sloan is still going to head up our hemp vertical and make sure that's ran the way it needs to be ran with his connections and his knowledge. And like I said, Mel will do the other, but we've got staff dedicated to each so that we can, again, understand and bank this arena, but leveraging everything we've already done and everything we already know, because the lift is so much easier. And we'll start to do that with other niche markets that we're looked at, or underserved markets that are considered higher risk.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to Courtney shortly to see if we have some questions from the audience. But the one thing that I think is really evident is that doing your homework is one of the most important things, as you said there, in all areas of high risk. But there is a reward that's associated with it. You have a certain funding strategy. Quite honestly, when I first started, when I was the CFO of a bank in Pennsylvania, the CEO told me that everything is based upon your lending, and then you got to figure out how to fund it. So from that standpoint, you're sort of doing both at the same time. Any funding strategy that you can execute at a high level is really, really important when it comes to that. So before I turn it over to Courtney and questions, is there any advice you would give the bankers in our audience, if I could ask?
If you want to have fun in banking again, this is a market to do it in. So it's unique. There's a lot of great industry leaders out there. I've honestly enjoyed getting to know this market, and I'm having a hard time stepping back and just let others kind of running with it so I can go get after the next thing, because I do enjoy it so much. So I 100% say that. It is a unique market. It'll give you something interesting to do, and it certainly will make you look good in front of your board when you can bring on this kind of business. And the beauty is there's enough business out there we can share in it, and we're still going to have an underbanked market, because there's a lot that are still out there banking behind curtains with the larger banks, and unfortunately waiting to get kicked out. I'd say if more of us will open our doors and be open about it, they'll feel more comfortable, and I think we can win over those business, and we can make it an industry that it should be and is already. We just need to make it more out there so people can recognize it the way I feel like our bank does.
Well, and that's really interesting, because the big banks, the Bank of Americas, the Chases, the Wells Fargos, if they find out you're anything touching this, they're throwing you out there, the BB&Ts of the world, et cetera. So it is definitely a community bank or community financial institution play, and that's really exciting. I think so, coming from the community banking space there. So, Courtney, can you tell us if we have any questions from the audience? That'd be great.
Yes, we have one here. They're interested in hearing how checking accounts are service charged.
So we have, again, a couple of different opportunities. We do a lot of fee waiving if you get the full bundle pricing. So we're happy to share any and all that with you guys. There's no secret sauce. And we charge our standard treasury management fee just like we would for anyone else. But we typically do a $250 sort of charge, and that's, can be refundable based on, again, relationship and how long they keep a minimum balance on tap. But anybody who wants to reach out, we're happy. We won't hide behind the windows and not share. But again, I want to say this: we don't go after this as a income play whatsoever. Our whole goal is this non-interest income. We try our best to use the fee to make up for our cost of business. So I just want to make sure, I think that might be a little bit of a difference in the hemp and CBD community versus the overall cannabis space. And again, that's not to say you should be going after each and charging them excess fees, but because one is much harder to monitor and manage, you have to cover your costs a little bit more extensively in that world because of some third parties you have to utilize.
And if I can just clarify, that's not $2.50, that's $250?
Yeah, but that's an upfront fee, not a monthly fee. And again,
okay.
It's something if you don't keep the minimum balance, something that's refunded. And so it's not a hard charge.
Okay, so you have account analysis and everything, correct?
Correct.
Great. Courtney?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have another one regarding efficiencies. How much did you guys have to expand your team?
So honestly, we hired on, again, I keep talking about Ross, and I hope he's on this call and he can speak up if he would like, Sloan, to head up our hemp vertical from just a sales aspect, because he'd already, was entrenched in that industry. So we brought him on not to work the business, but to help us garner more business and be truly the face of the bank for hemp banking. And then, in addition to that, we've literally brought in one risk person that her time is dedicated to really going through RiskScout and being that person that's heading that up. And she does, Lisa Pearson, she does a phenomenal job for us for that. Everybody else was already on our team. and already working, you know, in some other layers, and they just learned this and really gained some experience with it. So we have a compliance specialist during this time period we added, but that again is based on our overall metrics of how many, you know, accounts per volume, not just specific to this vertical. So that is, again, I keep saying it, but you have to leverage the automation tools, or else your metrics are all skewed by, you know, every 10 customers, one person. That's not doable, and you can't grow in this market. So, you know, FTE wise, I would say, you know, you can bring in a 2 to 3 if you want to really get in this and go at it hard and build a straight vertical where you have somebody dedicated to sales, somebody dedicated to risk. And then I think beyond that, you need to utilize staff that you already have that are doing things, and then they specifically would look at transactions and other things relative to the EDD of this industry.
Awesome. And we have another one. How do you see hemp legalities changing in the coming years in terms of getting stricter, easing up? What's your opinion on all that?
God, I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't know. We're all facing the Delta 8 dilemma right now. I think that's the biggest shakeup in the hemp and CBD world as we speak. And, you know, you got to be careful of that. You need to know what states that's not legal in, so you can, if you decide to bank on, figure out what that looks like, because nobody's going to tell you not to. Again, the guidance out there is we don't have a lot of guidance. Some states have given us some guidance, but we don't have overreaching guidance. So I think Safe Banking Act is going to help the whole world of cannabis, you know, THC and non-THC. But, you know, when that passes is anybody's guess. But I can just say this, honestly, our regulators are telling us to bank it. Our regulators are saying this is underserved market. Get your programs in place, but don't be scared that when we come a knocking that you're going to get, you know, slapped on the hand. You're going to get slapped on the hand if you don't have a program built and you happen to have a couple of people in the back door banking it. So that's my cautionary tale to that, and that's the best I can say with my crystal ball. I don't really know until FDA or somebody, USDA, whoever's going to be deciding, the government entity comes in and says this is how it shall be. But states have done a really good job of monitoring themselves, and I think the industry has done an amazing job of trying to create their own standards and really policing themselves, to be perfectly honest.
Definitely. Cool. We have another one. Have you had any issues with the FDIC on hemp or cannabis?
Absolutely not. To be very honest, our very first exam, safety and soundness with FDIC and the state. So I think I mentioned earlier, you guys, that we are chartered in Illinois. So we're under state of Illinois and FDIC of Chicago. And because we owned an entity here in North Carolina, a banking entity, I've seen both, honestly, and examined by both. There's a little bit harsher examination that we've gone through, in my experience, in Illinois, in a good way, because I think that makes us stronger. But they came in and we're very honest. Hey, we've not looked at a bank with hemp or CBD, but we know that's what you're doing because you called us and you told us. Walk us through what you're doing, how you're doing it. We're going to look at that along with, you know, the audit that you did specific to that. And like I said to Cole earlier, absolutely no issues. And I 100%. When I called the FDIC, my number one question, I had two questions. Said, if we bank hemp and or cannabis, will it impact my camel rating, and will it impact my FDIC insurance? And the verbiage I got was absolutely not, if you do it the correct way.
Got it. Very cool. Okay. And another one is, do you see yourself banking hemp internationally sometime in the future at Westtown?
Perhaps. We've already got some businesses that do some business with international, so we're looking into that, and we do take care of that from wires and activity for actual businesses to come here that are international and open up those accounts. We're sort of working through that.
Awesome. And you already sort of answered and gave some tips on building a good team for taking on this industry. Do you just have any last lingering leadership tips or sort of things that maybe a saying that you kind of go by?
Other than hemp banks here, I'm not sure. So we trademark that, but it's again, engaging your staff. You know, whenever we have a question about a COA or Delta 8, or we jump on a call or we talk about it and we say, does this make sense for the bank? Everybody's looking at it from a risk mitigation perspective, but because we engaged everybody early on and everybody gets to have a decision. And, you know, I tell everybody, I'm not the decision maker. I mean, everybody, y'all let me know if you need my help, but I want you to be the face of the bank. I want you to be the ones out there making this work for us, because you are the key to success. So I would say if you find people within your institution that raise their hand that want to be a part of this, let them join you, because they'll have so much fun. And again, it'll give you a good leverage because they're going to be out at conferences and talking to people, shaking hands, having luncheons, and that's what you want, because again, the industry needs to know we care about them and that we have people that we're going to dedicate to them.
Awesome. That's great. Cool. Well, that's all the questions we have for now. So I can turn it back over to Cole and yourself.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, audience, for those questions. If you have any more, most certainly you can reach out to me or even Melissa directly. If you reach out to me, I can give you her contact information. And my email is pretty simple, Coleman@RiskScout.com. And Kristen, can you take us home?
Sure. I'm just going to say thank you for attending, and we appreciate your time. And again, if you ever need any brains to pick in this land, you know, you've got Melissa and you've got, you know, myself and my team who get to work with a lot of institutions all over the United States setting up programs, and I'm seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly everywhere. So we're happy to give you our best practices for entering this space if you're brand new, or if you just need help if you're already in this space. So just feel free to reach out. And again, thank you, and look for a follow-up from us. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.